This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Melinda Kiefer, and welcome to Live Green, Tennessee, where we take you across our great state to explore agriculture, agritourism, sustainable living practices, and so much more. In this episode, we talk to a master gardener at the Putnam County Fair to learn about sustainable gardening practices such as water conservation. Then we visit a woman in Anderson County, Tennessee. Libby Bumgardner's love for log cabins has stretched all across her property. In fact, Libby has a collection of 6 of them. The one that belonged to her family was always special to her. But then she discovered something tucked away in a box. It turns out her family cabin is also historic. And finally, we sit down with Associate Professor David Butler from the Department of Plants and Science to talk about organic cropping systems. As part of the faculty of University of Tennessee, David spends most of his time researching organic cropping systems for vegetables and fruit. Located in the heart of Cookeville, Tennessee, we visit the Putnam County Fair to visit their beautiful display area and hear about sustainable practices such as water conservation. The Master Gardener's mission is to improve the lives of Tennesseans through horticulture education delivery by a dedicated and skilled volunteer network. In 2018, the Master Gardeners throughout the state contributed a total of 192,000 hours of service and education that represented a value to Tennessee of over $4 million.
I am a certified Master Gardener. I'm on my 11th year. To become a Master Gardener, you take a 40-hour class through the UT Extension, Tennessee. After you complete the 40 hours of educational classes, then you do 40 hours of volunteer work on our projects. Some of our projects are the flower gardens at the farmers market, around the depot. We plant the planters at the courthouse. One of my favorite projects is helping with Farm Day at Hyder Burks that's put on by Farm Bureau and Tennessee Tech. I think it's around 1,200 first graders come through that day, and they all get to plant a half-runner bean and take it home. Another project that we do is with Burks Elementary School. They bring children to Bend of the River for a 2 days of educational classes, and we're a part of that. They bring 3rd graders for 2 days and then 4th graders for 2 days, and they've been doing that for many, many years. Now we see the children of parents who came through many years ago. So we do a lot to educate children in Putnam County. Today we're just south of the South Grandstands at the Putnam County Fair. This barn has been provided to us for a number of years, and we transform it each year for the fair into a different theme. The theme for the fair this year is Back to the Barnyard. That is also the theme that we have replicated here in our barn this year. We have around 60 members, and we form teams, brainstorm ideas, and then the teams decide how they're going to decorate their area. I worked on the Back to the Barnyard area. Thankfully, I have friends who have collectibles, and they were willing to haul those in for us to stage. We have some members who are so talented, and they come in and help stage the areas to make them look their best. In the area, we have a child's goat cart. The children would sit in the cart and the goat would pull it. We borrowed a cow from Tennessee Tech that they use at Farm Day. For composting, most of us do that in our backyards someplace. Sometimes you can have a barrel or a tumbler. The best way, we have one available here, it's 3 bins, and it takes green, like your scraps from vegetables or fruits, and then it takes brown, leaves, dried grass clippings, and those things. It takes that combination to break down and to make the compost. Some people have wormeries that they feed, and oh my goodness, worm compost is just the best. It's called compost tea, and you can mix that with water and water your plants with it, and it's just phenomenal. I've never personally tried it, but we have demonstrated it before here at the fair. We love collecting rainwater, and here at our building we have 2 250-gallon containers that we collect water in. We do a plant sale every spring, and the end of February we start planting our seeds. We have a greenhouse that was given to us by Growers Solutions, and then 3 years ago there were vandals that vandalized our greenhouse, and we had to rebuild it. It is heated, we have large exhaust fans, and we just love when it gets plant sale time and we start planting seeds. We sow our own tomatoes, peppers, and many annuals that we sell, and even some perennials. It is so fun to be in that greenhouse on a warm, sunny day and it's 30 degrees outside. That's what all gardeners love, I think. But this year we had close to 4,000 plants by the end of the plant sale, and it was one of our more profitable years. With that money, we are giving money to the elementary schools that have gardens to help them buy tools or whatever they need to work with. We've also given a partial scholarship to Tennessee Tech for an agriculture student. So we put that money back into the community. At the UT Extension building on South Walnut, just west of the fairgrounds, we have gardens around the 4 sides of that building. On the south side and on the west side, we have phenomenal butterfly garden. It even has a beautiful yard art of a butterfly there. Also in the area, we have raised bed demonstrations with tomatoes, peppers, herbs. People can stop and see, and you can help yourself to a tomato if you see a ripe one as well. And then around the other side, we have a shade garden. It's just beautiful plantings. Like right now, Shasta daisies are in full bloom, and they're just so pretty. It's fun to drive around and just to see all the plantings and what's blooming. Well, everybody needs to visit this building during the fair. We have rock decorating that the children love participating in. Well, we thought it was going to be for children, but the parents like it as well. Also, we have herbs that you can touch, feel, and smell, and we have those labeled. Also, we have math involved. It's the math that is involved in sunflowers. It's the Fibonacci sequence of numbers, like 1, 3, 5, 8, 13. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 3 plus 5 equals 8. A young boy named Fibonacci discovered this in the 1100s, and he was made fun of. He was called a blockhead because he was always dreaming. And it's just so fascinating to learn how math is involved in nature. It's also on the bottom of a pine cone. Plants are so important. You're learning in science, elementary science, the process of taking in carbon dioxide and giving off oxygen, which we all need. Also, they just add so much beauty to an area. So we'll teach you how. People say they have a black thumb, but plants really desire to grow, and we will help you with that. You just contact us.
For a woman in Anderson County, Tennessee, Libby Bumgardner's love for log cabins has stretched all across her property. In fact, Libby has a collection of 6 of them. The one that belonged to her family was always special to her, but then she discovered something tucked away in a box. It turns out her family cabin is also historic.
My name's Libby Bumgardner, and I have a collection of cabins on my property. I've always loved log cabins, and it started with my grandparents' log cabin, which I didn't know was a cabin growing up because it had boards on it. We bought it in 1995. We were just walking around the cabin, and one of the boards was off, and I said, "That looks like a log." We pulled a couple more off, and we discovered it is in fact a log. So they left the beds, dishes, churns, lamps, all kinds of stuff in the cabin. It was dusty, and the beds were in there. They were made up, but they were dirty, and dusty. And I found one pair of pants that was hanging on the mantle on a nail. I guess maybe he'd been working outside or something and just hung them on a nail, maybe to dry or something, I don't know. All those years that people's lived around here, and it's just been an old boarded up house. There was one lady referred to it as Anderson County's best kept secret. Nobody knew about it. None of the county officials, nobody. So we just started digging and found out the history. I found out it was built in the late 1700s, maybe 1798 or 99. And it was built by George Walker for Isaac Brazelton. Isaac Brazelton only had the property from 1798 until 1803, and he sold it to David Hall. David Hall was a Revolutionary War soldier. He fought at Kings Mountain. He was an Indian spy, and he brought his family here and lived here until his death. And he had 12 children total. Today we refer to it as the David Hall Cabin. Right after I bought the cabin in 1995, we came up here and found this big wooden box. When I opened the lid, I thought, well, look at all this old books and papers and stuff in here. I guess all the letters from the Arnolds and the Halls and documents and stuff was in that box. And there were hundreds of letters, pictures, postcards, railroad timetables, toys, all kinds of things. Then when I got to looking at them and reading them, I couldn't put them down. I couldn't stop. Yeah, well, since they'd been here all these years and nobody was interested, and then I find them, and oh no, it was so exciting. It was just unbelievable. So I found negatives. The photos were all gone. I don't know if the mice ate them or what happened, but we had the negatives developed, and they were of my family. My father and all his siblings were born and raised in this cabin, and there was 11 children born to my grandmother in this cabin. Today we have 6 cabins. It started with one, which belonged to my grandparents, which is this one, and we bought another one to replace the one that used to be here that my grandfather had torn away because it was in bad shape. Then we purchased this one in Campbell County. While we were taking it down, we found another one. We took it down, brought it here, re-chinked everything. I pressure washed the whole cabin and started putting my grandparents' furniture and dishes and things on display and inviting people to come visit. That's how it got started. And we have people come visit almost on a daily basis. My husband or I come out and give them a tour of the cabins. Well, I hope to get them all restored and all the fireplaces put back on and porches, and just be able to maintain them. And there's not many of them left. And I just want to preserve what I can to make sure they stay for as long as they can. Well, this is too important not to share. It is. I like to share history. We open to the public. We have butter churners come, soap makers, long hunters camp. They shoot the black powder guns. They do target practice with tomahawks. There's a tinsmith that comes. We all dress in period dress, and I just walk around and visit with the people and explain things to them. So it's been a venture. It's a real labor of love. I'll get out here by myself and walk around and through the cabins, and it's like you can feel their presence. I'm sure that's just me, but it's just like they're there, you know, their spirit or whatever.
From the University of Tennessee, Associate Professor David Butler in the Department of Plants and Sciences sits down with us to talk about organic cropping systems. As part of the faculty of the university, David spends most of his time researching organic cropping systems in vegetables and fruit. Organic production systems are growing given the demand by consumers to have products with fewer pesticide residuals and have production practices that support environmental quality and impacts.
Associate Professor, Department of Plant Sciences, University of Tennessee, and I work with organic cropping systems. So I'm faculty at the University of Tennessee. 75% of my time I work in research. I do research in organic cropping systems, primarily vegetable crops, but also in some fruits like strawberry, which are a similar production system. And then 25% of my time I do teaching, so I teach 2 classes at the University of Tennessee. Well, I think organic production systems are growing for a number of reasons. I think the first is, of course, as you alluded to, there's a lot of consumer demand for consumers to have products that have fewer pesticide residues and have production practices that specifically pay attention to environmental quality and environmental impacts. For growers in Tennessee specifically, I think growers like the production system because they can get some what we call premiums for their products. They can charge a greater price, and that consumers are willing to pay a greater price because of the way that that product is produced. Organic production systems are challenging, and in many ways they integrate a lot of knowledge from a lot of different production areas, right? You have to know a lot about entomology or insects, and you have to know a lot about pathology and soil science and horticulture and crop science. And it can be really difficult to integrate all of that knowledge to create a quality product on a specific site that has specific environmental conditions. And as we think about conventional agriculture, the products used in conventional agriculture, like pesticides that cannot be used in organic agriculture, they do a lot to basically smooth over those differences in environmental conditions from site to site. Because if you have a pest, you know you can control it with that particular pesticide. In organic agriculture, you have to do a lot more to understand how those pests are interacting with the local environmental conditions in order to create the conditions that are favorable for production of that particular crop. I think a farmer that's been farming for a long time, that might be very difficult, right? Because they've learned to do things a specific way, and to change their production system to an organic production system would require a lot of changes in management, maybe in equipment, maybe in the crops they're growing, the varieties they're growing, and that can be very difficult to do. So I think any grower that's thinking about going to organic production systems, they'd want to do it gradually. A lot of times when we think about that transition period, a large conventional grower might transition just a small portion of their land to organic and market that separately from the rest of their products until they can learn that production system and have less of a risk at the front end. So with organic production systems, we often think that you have to manage that crop to what we call a whole systems approach. We also might call that overall field something like agroecology. You have to learn about all those different components of the system and how they interact to allow those plants to grow and produce in that particular climate, in that particular environment. So as you think about this for all of the different crops out there, not only in Tennessee but across the world, all the different environmental conditions, all the different pests that they have, you can see that there's a great amount of knowledge that you really need to have to manage crops without using some of those inputs that would be allowed to be used in conventional production systems. One thing that I do a lot of research on is soil disinfestation. So with high-value vegetable crops or crops like strawberry, conventionally, these crops have typically been grown with soil fumigation, so using a chemical pesticide that's a fumigant to nearly sterilize the soil prior to planting those crops. And that removes propagules or what we might say pathogens and weed seeds and things from the soil prior to planting that crop. Soil fumigation is used to control pests, soil-borne pests in soil, whether those might be fungal pests, bacterial pests, weed pests, nematodes in soil that attack plants. And in organic agriculture, you cannot use soil fumigants. And so a lot of the work that I've done is to look at organic alternatives to use of soil fumigants. And one thing that we've done is called anaerobic soil disinfestation. It's a technique of incorporating organic matter into soil and getting it to decompose anaerobically so that the compounds that are produced when something decomposes anaerobically, you may be familiar with things like acetic acid, which is a compound in vinegar, butyric acid. There's a lot of other volatile compounds that are formed under natural anaerobic decomposition of organic matter. And these things are toxic to a number of soil-borne plant pathogens. So we've been using that instead of what would be used in many conventional systems, soil fumigation for these high-value crops. Most of my research does deal with organic alternatives to soil fumigation, so we've been doing a lot with organic amendments to drive anaerobic decomposition to control specific pests. And two of the pests we've looked at most recently are southern blight, which is a pathogen that affects a lot of warm season vegetable crops like tomato, pepper, and cucurbits. And then we've also recently worked a lot with black root rot complex of strawberry, which is the primary pathogen that causes issues with strawberry production in the southeastern US. And we've looked at ways to control that pathogen through increasing organic matter in soil, and then the effects that organic matter decomposition in soil has on both the chemical compounds in soil, but also the organisms in soil that are encouraged by that organic matter decomposition. There's one fungal organism in soil, Trichoderma, which is known as a beneficial organism in soil that tends to increase when organic matter is incorporated into soil in this practice. And we've seen with southern blight, for example, southern blight forms this hard survival structure. It's just a really small spherical survival structure in soil that can survive for many seasons in soil. And what we've seen is with increasing organic matter through the soil disinfestation process, we've seen in these sites that have been treated like this, the trichoderma is actually parasitizing some of those fungal survival structures of the pathogen. So it's a method of natural biological control that we can encourage through the management practices that we're using in a specific production system. So organic agriculture has a number of required practices. In the United States, organic products to be sold as organic have to be certified by the USDA, and that certification comes along with it a set of practices that farmers must use on their farm to produce those crops and then to market those crops. And so a lot of those practices deal with how the specific management practices for a crop impact environmental quality. So for example, organic farmers have to use cover crops in any particular farming system. And those cover crops are used because they help to prevent soil erosion, they help to increase soil organic matter, they provide habitat for beneficial organisms. And so that's just one practice that organic farmers have to use. It's not to say that conventional farmers don't also use those practices, but organic farmers are required to use those practices in order to sell their products as organic. There are a number of other practices that organic farmers are required to do that get to environmental quality. Some of these include things like the pesticides that organic farmers are allowed to use. Tend to be pesticides that are natural products and that degrade very rapidly in the environment, so that they don't have, or that they have fewer off-target impacts on beneficial insects or pollinators or other beneficial organisms. Other things that you might see in a supermarket, maybe national products that use things like natural. Most organic producers in Tennessee do market locally, so if you're interested in finding those products, best outlet is probably your local farmer's market. A lot of organic producers also sell through local grocery stores or even chain grocery stores that then market those products as locally grown. Some farmers also do what we call community supported agriculture subscription programs, or CSAs, where you can subscribe to an amount of produce throughout the growing season from a specific farm that's offering that service. And that's another marketing practice that a lot of organic growers use in Tennessee.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Live Green Tennessee, where we take you across our state into the farms and businesses of those who are making the moves to eating fresh, living sustainably, and helping us all be more organic in our thinking and the way we live our lives as Tennesseans. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Live Green Tennessee.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.